how long do you work on just making sure, okay, now you have timing right. Now we'll start working with the weapon. Now we'll start working with this.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if people want to hear this, but I will say a lifetime. I've been training since I was 5 years old, and many of my peers and colleagues in the stunt industry are lifelong athletes. I started in baton twirling and dance. There's a lot of martial artists, obviously, a lot of gymnasts, some dancers, and other like parkour athletes. And so most of my peers, we've all been training since we've been young children. So there's already an endurance and a threshold that we've surpassed by the time we get to our professional careers. But it's not unusual for a working stunt performer to be training upwards of 6 hours a day, probably more for some people. We have rehearsals that could last up to 10 or 12 hours. I've been on shows where we have just consistent 10-hour rehearsals every day, and you're expected to be moving all day. Most rehearsals are about 8 hours though. And so that's just a regular work day for the stunt teams to come in, figure out what's going on, rehearse and choreograph, get our actors in, train our actors, and then film what we call a previs, which we film the entire scene shot for shot as if we were doing it on the day to be submitted to production. So those are long days. Sometimes that takes a couple days. And then when we aren't working, we're training on our own and working on like specific skills, whether that be gymnastics or martial arts, film fighting, like creating your own fight scenes so you can practice filming them and directing them. For me, like the weapon stuff, I'm always teaching classes because people are always learning and always training. And a good stunt performer has a lot of tools in their toolbox because you never know. Every show is going to be different. And suddenly they're like, oh, we need you to do this fight in this style. It's a bar brawl, but then the next fight might be a specific martial art. So you want to be able to adapt your movement styles to that. And that is a very difficult thing to do. And that's where it's helpful, where you're training so many different things. It's like cross training. The more you know, the more you're putting your body through, the more openings and vocabulary you have accessible to you in all moments and all time, because sometimes things just come up, or you might have a week off, you think, and then suddenly you're getting a call from a stunt coordinator and they're like, we need you to come and do this. And it's about being ready in any moment. You never know when you could get the call for your next big gig. That's what happened to me when I worked on Deadpool. Like, I got the call the next day. I was in rehearsal and I worked every day for 3 months, and it just happened like that. And so you just have to be prepared. So there is a lot of training. I'm moving into the behind the scenes choreographing, training actors, fight coordination side. So I'm actually backing off of my training for the first time in my life, the first time in over 30 years that I've trained less than 6 hours a day. And it's very nice, I will say.